Good afternoon, Defense Innovation Ecosystem. Welcome to the monthly Intro to Defense Innovation and Ask Me Anything. I have to pause my other screen over here with Capital Factory. My name is Kevin Landtroop. I am the VP of Defense here at Capital Factory. Where are my slides? Why is it not working? There we go. My name is Kevin Landtroop. I'm the Vice President of Defense here at Capital Factory. I've been working for the last few years to help connect entrepreneurs to the DoD innovation programs and technologies that the national security community has been looking for. I spent 20 years as an Army officer, both as an operator, as a national security lawyer, and conducting business operations within the Army. And I'm really excited to tell you guys all about Capital Factory, and particularly about how you can connect to what's going on here at the Center of Gravity for Defense Innovation. Capital Factory is the center of gravity for entrepreneurs in Texas, which is the #1 startup state in the US. We conduct meetups, co-working, large events, South by Southwest, so many things every year that bring in over 200,000 entrepreneurs, programmers, designers, gathering day and night. And that's live, virtual, boots on the ground here in Austin, Dallas, Houston, and a little bit getting down into San Antonio here in the near future. And according to PitchBook, Capital Factory has been the most active investor in Texas since 2013. And now Rebecca is going to kick us off with a little video.
Welcome to Capital Factory.
We are glad you could join us here at the Center of Gravity for Entrepreneurship in Texas.
We bring together entrepreneurs, developers, and designers across Texas for meetups, classes, co-working, mentorship, events, and our Accelerator program.
At Capital Factory's core, we're all about people and making lasting connections.
We meet the best entrepreneurs in Texas and introduce them to their first investors, employees, mentors, and customers.
We hope that you'll join us again and consider becoming a part of our community.
For more information on becoming a member, head over to join.capitalfactory.com.
Thank you.
So we like to say what we're doing here at Capital Factory is truly unique and no one else is even really trying. Texas Startup Manifesto connects the entire state of Texas as a single marketplace. We have a physical center of gravity that attracts so many great things. And one of the things that really makes Capital Factory work the way it does is we create this very, very attractive environment that brings in relevant people to entrepreneurship and technology, and even more and more over the last few years, the defense technology and innovation marketplace. And of course, that new defense center of gravity that we're going to focus on today, anchored by Defense Innovation Unit, who showed up here in 2016, and then AFworks, who showed up in 2018, Army Futures Command, who really came in and launched in 2019. Texas Military Department's here with us. Our guest today, Jim Rabuck, is a member of that Texas Military Department's Innovation Task Force, and then of course NGA and so many others. So that Texas Manifesto, that Texas Startup Manifesto that I mentioned, is one of the truly unique things about Capital Factory. So think about the state of Texas, anchored by the major markets of Dallas, Fort Worth, Austin, Houston, and San Antonio. That state, the state of Texas on its own, is the 10th or 11th largest economy in the entire world. And when you think about that kind of lazy triangle that includes those 4 major cities, you can drive from any one of those cities or those major markets to any other of those cities in a day for a day trip, for a boomerang meeting. You could even hit 2 or 3 of those cities in one day if you really wanted to. And that realization that we could unlock that entire state, that powerhouse of those marketplaces for our companies, was how really what Capital Factory currently was born. So we treat the state of Texas as a single marketplace 2 ways. One is we want to make sure that we can touch every great startup in the state of Texas. So if you're a startup between the seed to A round, and raising money, then you are exactly who we want to connect with and who our program is set up to help. Likewise, we can flip that marketplace, and our accelerator program really is organized to deliver 3 things to companies. That is big customers, investors, and talent. And so if you're looking for investors or you're looking for those Fortune 1000 companies that are going to become your first big commercial or enterprise level customers, think about all of the Fortune 1000 companies and industries that are represented by the state of Texas. And we like to connect all of those potential customers for your companies to our portfolio through this Texas Startup Manifesto. And again, we have our flagship location in Austin. We have a satellite location in Dallas. We are currently embedded in the station Houston, which will transition in the spring of next year to the Ion, which is a new building that's going to be an innovation space very much similar to the Capital Factory model in Midtown Houston, connecting Rice University and West U to the downtown, major business district of Houston. And Capital Factory, having acquired the station earlier this year, is going to have a central position in that space as well. So one of the things that we do in tech or here at Capital Factory for our companies is connect them to investors. So a lot of companies join us because they are going to raise, a seed or an A round, typically their first professional round, and they may not have a deep network of investors, or maybe it's just don't have the time to go out and cultivate it. So we have an investor relations team that works here in our accelerator team that's keeps a roster of over 700 different institutional investors that we routinely connect our companies to. And just last year alone, our venture team curated almost 3,000 one-to-one meetings for our portfolio companies and helped those companies raise almost $300 million. So in addition, I mentioned investors and big customers. So we have here a bunch of strategic partnerships and an innovation council that consists of a bunch of big companies whose logos you can see there on that slide, who you've most certainly heard of, that connect to Capital Factory into our physical space because they want to work with our companies. So our accelerator space is different than what you're going to see up, the logos that you're going to see up in a lot of other, startup friendly co-working spaces or accelerators, because these companies like Deloitte being a great example, Booz Allen Hamilton, Microsoft, IBM, AWS being great examples, they come here because they want to work with our portfolio companies. They're not just logos on the wall. They have innovation labs in our building. They're running programs through our programming team, and they're connecting to our portfolio through our corporate venture program. So I mentioned, Austin, flagship location. So we also have 38,000 square feet in Dallas at the Centrum, which is kind of between Uptown and Old Parkland. And if you know anything about where the money is in Dallas, Old Parkland is where a lot of it is. And that's why we chose that specific location, because we wanted to be close to all those family offices and help them connect to our companies as well. So I mentioned the station Houston. Capital Factory acquired the station earlier this year. Which includes its member base and its programs, rolled that into the Capital Factory team. And again, when the Ion opens up in 2021, which I believe it's scheduled to open up in February, station's going to move its physical location there to the Ion, and Capital Factory will have a really good central position in that amazing new innovation space that's going to be the future and the anchor of the Houston innovation ecosystem for years and years to come. So another initiative that we've got on the horizon, the Center for Autonomous Robotics. This was a program that we were about to launch in March until COVID decided that we weren't going to launch it in March, but it's still on the list of things to do once we can start going back into physical spaces again. This is intended to be a center where all of the different types of technologies and companies that would enable true, secure autonomy and small UAS and medium UAS activities can come together in one place. So when I talk about all the technologies together, I am talking about people who make drones, people who make battery and power systems, people who make sensors, companies that make edge compute and that secure edge to cloud link. The algorithms that are going to enable machine vision and autonomous navigation and all of those other things. And 5G, companies that are making networks. So all of those things, bringing all of those different types of technologies together into one space so that they can meet each other, work together, and rapidly develop and iterate on those technologies that are going to enable autonomous flight. So the center of gravity is really pulled together by a couple of things. Events and co-working is what brings people into the door. And I mentioned, over 200,000 participants in 2018. And that's including members, that's including people who are attending events, that's including the hundreds of mentors that we have in our mentor network. And then our VIP Accelerator program is really the second big thing. And our accelerator is different than a normal accelerator. This is not a Techstars program where you have a fixed cohort for a fixed amount of time and you have a menu of activities that you're supposed to perform. It's really more of a buffet. We set this really, really big table. We bring a lot of different things to it. We're able to service a bunch of companies simultaneously, and we're able to bring companies in at different times. So we'll bring in between 10 and 15 companies, 10 cycles a year into our accelerator assessment cycles. And when a company gets admitted, there is no specific end date to their participation in our portfolio. Once a company is in our portfolio, they will remain in our portfolio so long as they are active. The admittance into the accelerator will provide some free services and benefits that will terminate after a period of time. As an example, 6 months worth of free co-working membership here at Capital Factory, as well as some Azure Cloud credits and some things like that. But the relationship with the portfolio and all of the things that our portfolio delivers will last forever. So a hack of the drones, a good example of how we bring together things around innovation, specifically in the defense space. In September of 2018, right after Army Futures Command activated, they asked us to produce a drone hackathon for them, which we did right here in the building I'm in right now, down on the 5th floor. And this was sponsored by MD5. We do a lot of 100K challenges. So some of them are defense themed, some of them are not defense themed. But bringing in or doing these 100K challenges is a great way for us to highlight a specific technology problem that some of our partners are interested in. As an example, this year at Fed Supernova, we did human performance. Human performance brought in not only a bunch of really cool new companies, but it brought in the Air Force's 711th Human Performance Wing, which is part of AFRL. And it brought in a bunch of folks from Army Futures Command's Medical Research and Development Command, who owns the human performance portfolio for AFC. And then, of course, we were able to award a $100,000 check to an amazing company like Python, who was actually an AFworks StratFi winner, and bring another, just great spotlight onto our defense innovation ecosystem. So we all know that diversity is top of mind. It's in everybody's front yards these days. Capital Factory diversity is really nothing new for us. We have always been focused on diversity, equity, inclusion in all of our programs, and that means specifically targeting minority founders and investors from across a range of minority categories to bring into the accelerator. That means doing specific summits, roundtables, and other events around underserved entrepreneurial populations, helping, for example, Black founders raise money. So Google for Startups did a recent competition where they were awarding non-dilutive grants to Black founders. And of the 8 companies in the state of Texas that were awarded, 7 of those companies were Capital Factory companies. So we're very, very proud of that. So VIP visitors is one of the things that makes being a member at Capital Factory so powerful. We've had President of the United States, we've had the CEO of Apple, we've had the CEO of Microsoft, we've had the founder of Reddit, but in addition to that, we've had the Secretary of the Army and the Commander of Army Futures Command. I've had that discussion that's depicted on that table that you're seeing right there 3 times since we've opened the Center for Defense Innovation. We had the Secretary of the Air Force, the Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force, and Chief CQ Brown here back in August. And what does that mean when all these VIPs are coming through? It means that for our portfolio companies, every day is demo day. And you're going to get a chance to pitch the President of the United States, or you're going to get a chance to pitch. One of our portfolio companies just a few weeks ago got a chance to pitch the Secretary of the Army and the Commander of AFC. And those types of opportunities are popping up all the time. We work with a lot of other accelerators, so a lot of times we hear companies say, well, I've already done Techstars, I've already done Mass Challenge. The equity position that we take in companies is relatively small. It's about what you would give a single advisor, and instead you're going to get 180 Capital Factory mentors plus the whole Capital Factory machine And so it's very common for companies who have been through other accelerators to also work with Capital Factory. So let me really quickly just talk about the history of the defense presence here at Capital Factory in Austin. In 2016, when the Department of Defense, specifically Ash Carter, who was then the secretary, launched Defense Innovation Unit, they were looking to embed cells inside innovation spaces throughout the country where they'd be able to connect to venture-backed companies. And they picked a couple of locations, Austin, Texas being one. And of course, if they're going to put it in Austin, they had to put it at the Capital Factory, which they did. But that started the defense spotlight kind of being shined upon us. And next thing you know, we got AFworks in 2017. And then the Texas Military Department showed up, which they had been around for a while, but they officially launched the Texas Military Department's Innovation Task Force at our Fed Supernova event back in July of this year. Of course, the big spotlight happened whenever the Army announced they were activating Army Futures Command here in Austin. That announcement was made in July 2018. They activated the unit in August of 2018, but really it was February, March of 2019 with the opening of the Center for Defense Innovation on the floor that I'm standing on right now when things really got started. And so what happened in that first year since the opening of the Center for Defense Innovation? Well, 31 of our portfolio companies were awarded over $63 million in a range of DoD innovation contracts. And that was really without us having any deliberate programs to try to connect those companies. Since then, we've developed multiple programs, including a Defense Academy and an SBIR Accelerator that are specifically intended to help companies connect to those opportunities. So we've obviously gone virtual. What you're seeing there on the left is kind of what a typical live event would have looked like at Capital Factory. On the right is our team producing the AFworks Virtual Spark Collider back in March of this year. And so let me tell you about this SBIR Accelerator powered by our great friends at Microsoft. So this is a program specifically intended to wrap around the SBIR open topic cycle. So before the topic pre-announcement, we will conduct our Defense Academy so that you can learn everything that you need to know about how to get your first DoD innovation contract. And the reason why we time it that way is because we want you to be able to register for all the systems and get a cage code in time to submit your proposal. Then you submit your proposal in accordance with the SBIR submission cycle that's published by the DoD or the specific services. And then after the submission window closes, we do an assessment and you can apply for our SBIR Accelerator program, where we're going to help you make the most out of that phase 1 period of performance and get a great phase 2 award. So with that, I must have been a little wordier today than usual because I went 18 minutes instead of my usual 12 to 14. But I'm really happy to introduce Jim Rabuck. So Jim Rabuck is a former Army reconnaissance officer who now serves as the National Security Innovation Network, also known as Ensign, formerly known as MD5. He's the regional director for the Southwest region. In addition to working at the Pentagon, Jim currently serves as the Texas National Guard as the Deputy Chief Innovation Officer. Jim's a graduate of the Stanford at Night program, currently completing the Rice University MBA program. And Jim really, his mission and what he's driven by is working to help our soldiers and their units source military challenges that can be solved by our nation's best asset, which is our people. So Jim, hey, thanks for coming. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you for the here. So yes, to start, I'm excited Factory is doing. That's something I've been part of back in 2014. Whole idea, and they're the ones that to begin really start a company. Are you guys able to hear me?
Hey Jim, you sound very like slow and drawn out and robotic. We want to try maybe unplug the mic.
You guys hear me now?
It's still not great.
Great. All right. And the alternative.
Are you guys able to hear me?
Oh, that's great. That's perfect.
Much better?
Yes.
All right, fantastic. Well, I won't go back into that again. I appreciate the invitation. So I guess going into that, I would love to begin by sharing a little bit about Ensign. So I guess, what's the best way to do that, Kevin? Is there a
You know
slide
what?
click?
Oh, you know what? Actually, I've got the slide, so I guess you can just say next slide and I'll forward it. Rebecca's going to go ahead and pop me down. And the stage is yours, my friend.
All right, well, great. So a little bit as Kevin was sharing, the history of Ensign really began when MD5 was initiated by Ash Carter. And the idea is you have organizations like DIU and Ensign, Army Futures Command, AFworks, and you have all these organizations that have pushed forward with the intent based off of what Ash Carter said is we have to move faster. The DoD needs to innovate, and we need to push out ideas to our soldiers. We need to allow them to rise up through the ranks to do that. So you could go to the next slide. So when we're looking at it, I think that Capital Factory has identified this, and we don't have to go into it in depth, but the DoD is a great place when it comes down to looking at what it means to develop big tech. So if I were to put on my military hat for a moment, what that means is the Texas Military Department is developing what could be the first autonomous corridor for a DISCA mission. That means, what does it mean to respond to a hurricane event when we could naturally just have drones that could go down and begin searching for potential people who are stuck during a hurricane. And the benefit is the Texas Military Department is a massive organization that has the land, has the money, and has the people to go and test this. So organizations like Army Futures Command and AFworks, who don't have the end users, can plug into an organization like TMD to go and execute on that mission. So big ideas are a great place to go and begin testing within the DoD. If you can move to the next slide. So, but like all you guys know, the DoD is difficult to navigate. There's a lot of bureaucracy. There's a lot of people who have to put their stamp of approval on a process, and it just takes a long time. So the benefit is, now that I put on my Ensign hat, that's where we can begin looking at what it looks like to navigate. And really what this is showing is what organizations previously had to do is spend billions of dollars to work with the DoD. So you have these large primes and these large organizations who are the ones who previously only had access to the DoD to do this. Well, now they're starting to see, hey, how do we remove these single points of failure? How do we begin to open up the network and open up the opportunity to work with the DoD to smaller organizations? So that's where really Ensign comes in. If you could go to the next slide. Yeah. So what that means is Ensign as an organization really is designed to do one thing. I spend 90% of my time in front of soldiers like this. What that means is really helping them stand up what it means to conduct root cause analysis, source those problem sets and surface them. So ultimately, I can leverage Ensign programming to connect them with the problem solvers that are out there. What that means is, like you saw, MD5 previously, Ensign has switched from MD5 to Ensign, but they'll run hackathons. They'll run SBIR Accelerators. So an example of this is 2021.1. Ensign is sourcing problem statements from soldiers to identify what are these areas that we really need to begin innovating on when it comes down to plugging in startups with these problem statements. Beyond that, we also plug into a pretty large ecosystem of universities. If you could go to slide 8, Kevin. So keep going, 2 more. 2 more down. There you go. So when it comes down to Ensign's mission, a lot of times we'll partner with organizations like Capital Factory, but we're also spread across about 80 universities at this time. So we have personnel at Texas A&M, UT Austin, MIT, Carnegie Mellon, Cal Berkeley. So if you look at this list, what that means is as we source these challenges, we can feed them into research institutes. And what we know is that research institutes have historically had a difficult time when it comes down to commercializing IP. Well, the DoD is a direct pathway for a lot of these organizations to begin looking at how can this technology be implemented with DoD. And a great example of this is our very own UT Austin has a material, a plastic material that can sanitize water within a canteen. So now we're able to, and the beauty behind this is it's a dual use technology. It's being used for, I believe, baby bottles, but now it's being applied to if a soldier needs to drink water and they're using it overseas and they don't have a way to filter that water. Well, what if we were to make a canteen out of this product? And that's an easy way for them to commercialize it within the DoD. And Ensign helps facilitate that. If you could go down to the next slide, Kevin. So the next piece that Ensign does is, as we source these problem statements from our soldiers, we begin to see value of the other side of the ecosystem. So whether it's the Techstars, the Capital Factories, the Y Combinators of the world, those are the people that really are the subject matter experts when it comes down to being able to solve technology challenges. So an example of this is a soldier has to create or mimic a digital twin. How do you trick the enemy into thinking that there's more tanks than just one? Well, a military unit doesn't have that capability to solve it. So what we can do is we can then begin sourcing that out to interesting companies that are out there that are working on these challenging problems, and ultimately can bring that into the DoD and work that through Ensign. So if, Kevin, if you could go to kind of the slide 11, so 2 slides down. So what that looks like for Ensign in particular is the way that this works, and why it matters for Capital Factory is if we're looking along the timeline from idea curation within soldier units to how this becomes a program of record, that's a very long period of time. And Ensign helps facilitate that really from an idea to prototyping or a hackathon to sponsoring SBIRs and helping find those partner MOUs. So for many of you who might be on this call, you might have a technology that you believe has a fantastic application to the DoD and you want a phase 1. Well, my role is to help find military units that can sponsor your idea and really invest in your company to ultimately solve a problem that might be only applicable to their one unit or applicable to every single military unit in the Defense Department. So when it comes down to working specifically with startups, my role at TMD, I've written upwards of 20 to 25 MOUs and helped sponsor over $156 million that have been invested into startups through the Texas Military Department. Some of them are StratFi winners that have won $30 to $40 million, and then some of them are just your company that won a phase 2 that wants to test an idea. That ranges from autonomy to cybersecurity to a new transmission that reduces the use of fuel by 30%. So based off of that, my role at Ensign, I spend 90% of the time with soldiers. And then I believe the rest of the part is feeding into organizations like Capital Factory that can really identify the market for startups. So based off of that, Kevin, I'm happy to help field any questions or answer anything on your part.
Well, let's have a chat. So Jim, that's really interesting. I feel like people don't really understand where Ensign fits in to the landscape of all what I call the DoD X. So AFworks is, I think, pretty clear. They write checks, or at least they connect.
Yeah.
They use their program to connect companies through the SBIR and AFventures to those opportunities where they're going to win some of that, non-dilutive funding. DIU, Again, fairly simple to understand exactly what their mission is. Customer comes in and says, we need a technology solution for this. They determine there's a commercial solution out there that can address it. They run it back to their program through their CSO, and then eventually a contract ends up on the other end. But you guys are working kind of more ecosystem, like universities and things like that. So if I'm a startup, what is it that I am looking for Ensign to help me do, or what is it that I should be, how should I be looking at Ensign?
So the interesting thing about Ensign is actually, when we're looking at structurally how DIU is established, Ensign is part of that organization. In my functional role is to go identify problems for soldiers and then find an outlet for them to do that. And there's 3 outlets for that. There are startups, there is research and development, and then the last is, are there organic capabilities within like a university or an ecosystem that Ensign doesn't run that I can plug them into. So when it comes down to Ensign, our goal is purely to work with, when we're looking at DIU is focused on, can we get this project funded through our own CSO or contracting vehicle? Is that a yes or a no? Is this a long moonshot project? Is yes or no? And for Ensign, what we're doing is we're primarily educating soldiers on how to surface those challenges from the very beginning. So an example would be, so TMD. I drilled this past weekend, and a majority of my time was spent educating brigade commanders and staff on how to get to root cause analysis and surface it in a way that this is the baseline underlying problem and how to feed that up into these channels. Now, the thing with startups, the primary way that they can begin plugging into this is simply, as I source problem sets, I have a number of programs where I can either plug them into an SBIR company. So if they say, here's an interesting problem set, I believe I can solve that, I can make that connection between those two through the SBIR process. And I can help them either get funded or at least get to the point of having a conversation with the soldier to do that. The second way to do that is, just like you saw hackathons, if they're at the end of a hackathon, if you identify that this is a potentially solvable issue that is already commercially available, well, the other set is I go help that unit identify how to get the funds to procure that item. Sometimes that's internal funds. Sometimes that's through an OTA, which is a transactional authority that has funds. And then the last is through really these SBIR dollars, which can be used, and primarily have been only for Air Force, but we have 21.1 coming up, which now is primarily going to be used as a joint open topic. So for startups, I help plug you guys into soldiers. Like, bottom line, that's what I do.
It's funny. So hearing you describe that, Jim, you are doing something very similar to what I'm doing, except for I'm much, much closer to the startups and helping them find you, and then helping at the same time, like, our partners understand how the programs work. And you're doing kind of the exact same thing on the other side, on the unit side, which is you're helping the soldiers articulate their problems, find the pathways in for their problems. Like, I'm trying to help our companies understand the problems that your soldiers are bringing in, right? And likewise, I'm trying to help our companies access the programs, and you're trying to tell your constituencies what programs they could use to pull solutions forward towards those problems, right? So it's like we're kind of meeting in the middle.
Yeah, exactly. And the idea is that I'll be honest with you, like, my goal in life is not to go help do business development for a startup, because it's an open market, it's competitive, and let the best person win. I believe that competition drives excellence. But if we can't, the military, especially as an former Army officer, active duty, it is very difficult to change the culture of how do you source these problem statements in a way that affects the soldier who is the end user that is using this item. And it is my mission to help them source these challenges so that ultimately somebody like you at Capital Factory can plug them into the whatever that solution is.
Well, don't knock business developers, because in a big way, that's kind of what our program is set up to do. It's set up to help these companies understand the needs of and connect to customers, and in some ways, do the translation and communication between. So, Rebecca, I think we have some questions coming in. You want to throw one up on the screen? So Cynthia says, is this just for those that require an accelerator program, or are there other pathways forward? Cynthia, I'm not 100% sure I understand what your question is. So we offer, at Capital Factory, we offer an accelerator program. We also have an SBIR Accelerator, which is specifically focused on that SBIR program. The SBIR Accelerator program doesn't take any equity. And then Jim has described a little bit about what they do that's kind of accelerator-like from the government side, getting the problem statements forward. Jim, you want to add anything to that? And feel free to clarify your question if we're not touching it.
I think on the side of, does it require an accelerator to work with Ensign? No, it doesn't. So inherently, we have a couple programs where we partner with accelerators like Capital Factory to execute. But when it comes down to, ultimately, if you have a solution that solves a problem for a soldier, it doesn't have to feed through one. However, an organization like Capital Factory provides resources that Ensign won't be able to provide. So a good example of that is Ensign won't be providing like how to navigate the structure of your business. But we can provide how to navigate the pathways within the DoD. But that's where an organization like Capital Factory can really help out. So that's kind of where I would see the differentiator here. So, but it's not a barrier to working with it. I just see it as a contributing way to work with the DoD.
Yeah, and thank you for reminding me, Jim, when you were going through your charts and you had the slide up about the different accelerators and venture funds that you guys work with. I think we need to get a Capital Factory logo on that slide.
Yeah, it's definitely, it is an intent, and I know that we have a program called Propel that literally works all of our programming through an organization like Capital Factory to make that happen. They've tested it with Techstars. I think it worked out pretty well. And I'm a fan of Texas. I'm a Texan now. I own a home here. I've been in Texas and was stationed here. And I would love to see just Austin really flourish when it comes down to DoD innovation.
Awesome. So okay, let's go to this question. Can we view a list somewhere of the problems you are trying to solve? And I'm assuming this means the ones you're pulling forward from the field.
Absolutely. So we have a website. It's called innovatedefense.net. And really that's where we are beginning to source all of that. It generates where these problem sets are, it tags them. So if let's say that you are a cybersecurity company and you want to focus on whether it's the network or cybersecurity itself, we can share those problem statements there and allow you to gain access. And I haven't spoken with Kevin about this yet, but ideally we could feed that through Capital Factory so that people could gain access to that. So that would be the primary way to gain the funnel through it. The other is through one of the programs. So we're running a cybersecurity hackathon for First Cav. And it's gonna be almost like a reverse pitch event where they'll go and pitch all their ideas in front of people. I would say that when it comes down to this problem, there's a lot of these problem statements just sitting around in a lot of different buckets. I'm sure Kevin can attest to that. Like you have Army Applications Lab, you have AFworks, you have Army Futures Command, you have another 10 other organizations where these problems rest. And ultimately, the goal for Ensign is to bring those in to an easily viewable location. And honestly, it's something that we're building towards as well. But at a minimum, reach out to me and say, hey, this is what I'm doing, and this is who I'm trying to connect with, and I can pass that out to our program managers. That's the Wizard of Oz effect behind the behind the glass, if I can help out, that's something I can do as well.
Cool. I want to get to, okay, we're going to go on to that question. How is Ensign similar or different from AFworks, Softworks, and so on? You know, this is a question that we get, and this is actually exactly the question that this monthly AMA is kind of tailored towards, which is helping folks understand kind of entry level, who are all these organizations and how are they different from each other?
Yeah. So to start off with, a good way to think about this is AFworks is designed, so we have their Spark cells. So an example of this, I was on the phone with Dyess Air Force Base today, and my conversation with them was focused heavily on how are they sourcing their problems? How are they creating a matrix? So what is the impact on soldiers? Like, are they going to die if this thing doesn't exist? Or is this just going to make their food taste better in an MRE, right? Like evaluating the level of impact. And then also, what is the depth of this product? Does this affect a soldier? Does it affect a squad, a wing, a brigade? So the reason why I bring that up is that's an AFworks unit that is sourcing challenges. So I go to them and help them source that. But ultimately, as that feeds in, they can go and source funds to go solve this. Ensign on the back end is helping bring those problems forward to them. So a lot of the problems that go to AFworks are sourced by Ensign. We also, on the back end, work with AFworks to evaluate those problem statements. So we have people from Ensign, as these SBIRs are submitted, are being evaluated by multiple Ensign employees who are under NDA. If you ask me, I won't share their names, but they're the ones who are on the back end saying, hey, this is a great solution, or this doesn't really fit. So they're on that committee of evaluating whether or not this SBIR is going to have an impact. So as that feeds in, AFworks itself is paying for it. And then, but the thing for us is we are not a contract vehicle. I do not pay for something, but I help you navigate to what that contract vehicle can be.
Well, that makes sense. So I want to go to Cynthia's question about software. Is this only for software development or other topics as well? So from Capital Factory's perspective, our program really is completely agnostic of any industry or type of product. And the way I think about that is the types of companies and the types of products that they're deploying that connect with our program differs by market. So Austin is primarily a software town. There's tons of SaaS, app development, AR, VR, artificial intelligence. Like most of the companies that we work with are kind of around those industries, very software heavy. But you go to Houston and you get a lot of energy. The energy industry is a heavy influencer in the Houston market, as well as med tech. So we get a lot of medical devices. We get a lot of software around health tech and enabling, you know, the oil and gas industry. But we also get a lot of like asset inspection companies. Water, we got a lot of water purification and other water, you know, type of things. So I guess the short answer to your question is no. For us, if you have a product, if you have some customer revenue and traction, and you can identify a market to scale into, and you would benefit from the addition of venture capital, you'd be a good fit for our program. And then I'm going to let Jim answer from, like, say, AFworks. Is AFworks just looking for software, or are they looking for other things as well?
No, it's very broad. I mean, the problems arise from anything from how do we tow a helicopter when we don't have a vehicle? So that's not going to be a software solution, to how do we reduce the energy burden placed on our military posts. So sometimes really we look at the size of the challenge can be from this affects the entire military to something very small, and that can be a tangible thing, just a product that the military can use. Like one subject is the MRE. How are we making the MRE better? That has nothing, that is purely how do we make the food that our soldiers are eating and the food more efficient, more effective, and better for their health. And that's something you just wouldn't think that would go through AFworks, but it does.
Well, and one of our biggest companies, one of our biggest TradFi companies, Icon, their solution definitely relies on software, but what they actually have built is a giant robot that prints houses out of concrete. Very, very, very hardware.
Yeah. And an interesting thing. Oh, sorry, Kevin. I was just so MedCom down in JBSA down in San Antonio, like they are building. So today's Agent Orange of GWAT are burn pits, right? Like how many burn pits have soldiers breathed in for years? Icon is now saying, hey, how do we create a furnace that reduces the amount of smoke that soldiers are breathing in? And Icon is creating a 3D printed furnace that we can deploy in a combat region. So pretty cool.
You know, I wasn't expecting to have flashbacks of barrels of burning waste today. So thanks for taking me back to that.
You're welcome.
So Pete Foreman has a
Sorry,
that's good. It's good. Pete Foreman had a question about our VIP experiences, and Pete, it's good to see you. It's good to have UT Dallas represented here today. So we make those decisions internally. Whenever our VIP team and experience is really kind of a playbook. Whenever an entity requests a VIP experience, they fill out a form stack. That's kind of the entry point. It lets us know something about them and what they're interested in, and then the back end of the Capital Factory engine goes to work. So great example, Caroline Tosbath of our mentor team, and then our corporate venture team, Courtney Real and Helena Krusek. Like their whole job is to know who our portfolio is and who they should be connecting to and who should be connecting to them. So based on the information that those VIPs fill out, if somebody's interested in blockchain, we pull out some blockchain companies. If somebody's interested in cybersecurity, we pull out cybersecurity companies. And if they're a good fit for our innovation council or other things, then we can pull in other members of the team based on that. So that really is a good example of kind of how the back end of Capital Factory works and how we're able to scale the connections that we make across our entire portfolio of about 500 current active companies. So there were several questions regarding the structure of the SBIR proposal. So I just want to look through a couple of those. So Richard's question about, this is actually the one I was looking for. So the phase 1 open topic submission, which I assume is what you're talking about, which is the AFVentures AFX open topic SBIR, not STTR, because the answer is different. You have to submit the proposal through DSIP, which is the Defense Small Business Innovation Research Portal. It will force you through the process to create a cover page in the DSIP portal. So you don't need to create that separately, but you should write your technical volume first. So your technical volume is 5 pages. Follow the format in the X20.3 solicitation. And I believe it's like pages 13 to 18 of that describe the 9 sections that your technical volume should cover. And it starts with statement of the problem, the opportunity, then your technical approach, and then your work plan and related work. And, and they're very clearly spelled out. Just directly address those bullets exactly as they're written in the proposal. Just use a standard Word document, 11-point Times New Roman is totally fine. They don't care as long as you put that exact information with those exact headings in that exact order. So do your technical volume first, because you're going to need the technical abstract portion that you wrote in your technical volume to cut and paste into that cover sheet that you're going to create in DSIP. And then an additional product that you will have to produce is the 15-slide deck. And again, if you go back to that X20.3 solicitation, all the way down at the end, it's like the last 17 pages, I think, of the solicitation. It has an example of each of the slides that you have to make. So they don't give you a template like fill this in, here's a PDF, or here's a Google slide or a PowerPoint, fill this in. But they give you an exact example of what they want and in the order that they want it. And you may not think that their proposal template is very creative. However, I would strongly caution you to fill out the slides exactly as they have instructed, because this is not going to be graded by, well, it's kind of going to be graded by a robot. They're going to physically print the slides out, and they're going to break them up, and they're going to hand them off to different teams. And those teams are going to want to see what's on that slide that they told you to put on slide 12. So that is certainly the way that I would do it. Anything to add to that, Jim?
The only piece that I would say that isn't inherently covered in the process that they provide is I can't encourage it enough to the point where, so if I take off the Ensign hat and Ensign or TMD, the thing is just because you win a phase 1 does not mean that you are going to get an MOU signed by a soldier. And if you want to get that phase 2, the critical piece here is it is important for you to create a relationship with a military member to begin driving what that second step looks like. Because the phase 1, it's great to say, hey, I'm under contract with AFworks on this, but something that you should begin looking at is what does it look like to create that phase 2? Because at the end of the day, it's the soldiers who say, hey, I need this problem solved. And unless you're working it through them to get that done, you may not have a next step after that. So I just heavily encourage you to, if there is a problem statement that comes out, understand what branch of the military it is, what they do, kind of the surrounding environment around that. And if you guys have challenges around that, that is why Ensign exists. So when it comes down to understanding who the military members are that you want to work with, that's a critical step.
Yeah, so, and just one more comment on this. So I just posted the PDF link for the solicitation in the chat and YouTube, and I'm looking at it right now. And on page 18, which is section 5.0 of the solicitation, it says phase 1 proposal. That right there, starting at page 18 and going through page 33, are the instructions about how you can fill out that proposal. And Rebecca's reminding me that I can't post a link, but everybody who's looking at the chat can simply copy that link and paste it into their browser, and they'll be able to see exactly what I'm looking for. So there's another question about how Ensign is funded.
Yeah, so we fall under the Secretary of Defense, so we're OSD, and then under the research and development side. So we're actually, majority of the money that funds us is coming from, I believe, the Army Research Lab. So hopefully that helps answer, but it is funded through the Pentagon under the Defense Department, and it's an official federal organization.
Yeah, that was something that was confusing to me when I first came in contact with MD5, is I thought it was some kind of hybrid public-private. And there was a question earlier about how does Ensign compare to like Softworks? Softworks is a private organization. Softworks is not a government organization. It is a .org, not a .mil or a .gov. They are funded by the government, but they're funded through a partnership intermediary agreement. Otherwise, Softworks kind of looks and acts kind of exactly like the combination of like Ensign and AFworks, because they're curating the problems, they're running the challenges, and they're connecting those solutions to the customers within SOCOM AT&L. But they don't actually have any appropriated funds. They want a contract through a partnership intermediary agreement competition to facilitate that. So it is understandable these things can be super confusing.
And we work with Softworks. So Softworks is an organization that we will go support when needed. But yeah, to your point, they're not a federal organization.
So we've got one more question, and we probably just about have time for one more question. And that is, when you say you can access SBIR funds, please expand on that, what that means from a small business perspective.
So I guess.
So I think what they're asking you about, and what I think you should talk about, is for Texas-based companies, kind of how the Texas Military Department's Innovation Task Force, which are also very, very closely affiliated with, is helping companies get those MOUs, close that $150 million worth of funding, including some StratFi opportunities. So like, how have you been involved in that, and what should companies know about what's out there to help pull them in to those programs?
Yeah, so the process is fairly simple. I think number one is look at the solicitations that are out there. Understand, hey, this is what we can potentially solve. If it's for the upcoming 20.3, with that coming up very closely, and if you're a phase 1 winner, the best thing to do is reach out to me. Let me understand what you're solving, what problem it is, and then I'll see if it really aligns with what the Texas Military Department is. We have a few initiatives. One is focused on how to improve the Camp Mabry and our outposts in general. How do we make them more energy resilient? Whether it's burning trash to create energy, or creating an autonomous zone, or helping out with vertical takeoff and lift so that we can move things quicker or more easily. The next piece behind that is, if you believe that you have something that can be used, we just need to understand really what's the impact. Is this something that is going to impact the entire force? And then what's the cost at the end of the SBIR? Is this something that's going to cost the Texas Military Department $5 million, or is this something that's going to cost us $5,000 to solve a $5 million problem? And what that will look like is sitting down with you, writing out an MOU. If we agreed that it works out, then we can move that forward. Now, if we're looking at the 21.1, what that looks like is, what applications do you believe that the military does not know that it needs? And what that means is sharing those ideas with us, because a lot of times it's those unknown unknowns that we don't even know that might be a problem, that we just need to begin to source. And we do have a limited time. There's about 2 weeks left to be able to solicit those problems. So if you have an idea that the military can really operate off of, shoot me an email and we'll set up a 5 to 10 minute call and go over your solution.
Well, so that was actually going to be my final question, and somebody wanted to know how they can contact you. So I assume it's okay for Rebecca to post your email address in the chat?
Yeah, that's totally fine.
And if you want to get in contact with Capital Factory and learn more about how to become a member, of our portfolio or any of our defense programs, email memberships@capitalfactory.com or partnerships@capitalfactory.com, and somebody will be able to respond to you and get you into the program. So I will answer Rick's final question as we close out, and then I'll thank Jim. So Rick, the SBIR cycle runs 3 times a year. The submission windows for the different cycles are actually published on the SBIR STTR website. So the next one, I believe, topic pre-announcement is going to be in November, and then the window for submitting proposals is going to be in January. So look for that to open up again right after Christmas. Thank you so much, Jim. I've really enjoyed over the last, I think you and I met in person for the first time right after COVID closed us all down. And I've really enjoyed getting to know you over the last 6 or 7 months. So thank you for doing what you do, being active in our community, helping our companies, and thanks for coming on today to talk to us.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity.
Awesome. We will see you guys all next month at our monthly Intro to Defense Innovation and AMA. Thanks, Rebecca, for running the show for us, and I will see you guys all soon.